Hi, I'm Cara Sofoko, and you are listening to Over the Top, Under the Radar. Each week, we take a critical look at the news agenda, focusing on stories that have gone over the top and received too much attention, and those stories that fly under the radar and haven't been covered enough by mainstream media. This week's episode is a deep dive into American politics, and specifically electoral politics. So we do talk about the Trump government shutdown and Trump more broadly. But Amanda Litman, who is my guest, co-founded an organization called Run for Something, and it focuses on getting young people from diverse backgrounds to run for office in the United States. Hopefully you'll enjoy the interview as much as I did. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Feels like a bit of a daunting task to have someone on to talk about all of the American politics. But we do need to start on the shutdown because I feel like that's breaking news as we're talking now. For people who aren't tuning in from the US, can you just give us an explanation of what the government shutdown is? And am I right in thinking journalists go a little bit crazy on this? It feels like there's a lot of coverage given we sort of knew it was going to happen. Like, do you think people go over the top in terms of how much they talk about it? Or is it really as important as all of the headlines suggest?
Somehow the answer to all of those questions is yes. It is incredibly important. And somehow we're not talking about it enough. And we're talking about the wrong things. So the government shutdown, the United States government is funded by Congress. Congress sets the budget and then it is signed by the president. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. There was back in March a spending bill that the Republicans, along with a couple Democratic senators, passed that basically extended the previous budget for another 6 months. It was March to September. And the fight over that spending bill was very tense. In the months since, Republicans have passed huge cuts to healthcare, in particular to Medicaid, which is healthcare for low-income people and kids in poverty, mostly. Cuts to Medicare, which is healthcare for older people. Huge cuts to public radio, public funding, as well as done what's called rescissions, impoundment. They've said that, we approved this funding, but actually we're going to take it back. And the government doesn't have to spend the money we've already approved. So we're at a moment now that the government budget had run out. There was a deadline to pass a new spending bill. Republicans were like, no, we don't want to do this unless you're going to give us more power to cut healthcare. Democrats said, we're not going to vote for anything unless you put money back for healthcare, unless you restore some of the cuts that you've made, and you promise not to do any more takebacks, no takebacks, along with some cuts to public radio, that kind of thing. They need 60 votes in the United States Senate in order to pass anything because of the filibuster, and there are only 53 Senate Republicans. One Senate Republican refuses to vote for it. Rand Paul, who has his own weird quirks around this.
Yeah, he's on his own limb, isn't he?
Well, a little weirdo. I respect the weirdo, but a little weirdo. So because there is no operating budget for the United States government, the federal government shut down. What that means in practice is there are hundreds of thousands of people currently not working and not getting paid. Many, many more who are working but without getting paid. Military, members of the military that are showing up to work without any promise of a paycheck. Government functions will start to slow down in the weeks and months to come for as long as this lasts, including things like maybe checks not getting cashed, passports not being processed, national parks maybe will close. I think this was the right thing to do. We are seeing a moment where, one, Democratic leaders need to show they can fight, and this is the singular point of leverage they have. They've identified what they want from Republicans, and if Republicans won't give it, that's on them. And I think somehow we're still not talking about it enough because we're talking about it as who's going to get the credit for the shutdown? Republicans control government. It's theirs, full stop. And we're not talking about the impact this is going to have on people because it really does damage. The federal government, if not the biggest, one of the biggest employers in the country, it is hugely important for the quality of people's life. It does so many direct services for folks. And as things start to crumble, people are going to feel that, and it's going to cause harm. And in the meantime, the reason that Democrats are refusing to vote for this spending bill is because healthcare premiums are about to double or triple. People are going to be paying thousands of dollars a month to buy healthcare. 22 million people's healthcare costs will go up if they don't pass a new bill. 4 million will lose healthcare entirely. It is dangerous, dangerous shit that we're dealing with. So I think it's good that we're fighting, and I think we're just not talking about the right things.
Great. Yeah. And I think it's funny. It feels like there's a sort of set playbook that journalists like for the shutdown, and the sort of political theatre of it seems to come out. You get lots of and I guess it's maybe similar to the UK, where you have a ton of reporters in DC. So they want to do vox pops. They want to be walking around the Capitol. Whereas, as you say, it sounds like the bit that's more concerning is the stuff that's not going to be funded, or the people that are going to be furloughed. And I think for non-Americans, it always seems a bit, I think the last shutdown was 2018, just always seems a little bit quirky that your entire federal government can be shut down based on a bunch of political representatives voting for a budget or a continuing resolution, I think it's called. So it sounds like you think this is an example of the Democrats kind of finding their feet and finding their voice against Trump, a way of being like, we can do something.
I think it is imperative. Had they given up at the first chance, they would have faced pure revolt from the base. When we already saw it the first time when Schumer folded at the very last minute back in March, it was one of Run for Something's biggest candidate recruitment moments of the year. People said, they're not going to fight for me. I'm going to fight for me. So I am glad that they found their backbone. I think they got to hold strong. Part of being a good politician is convincing your opponents to be in coalition with you, to find a compromise. If Republicans can't be good politicians, then what are we doing here?
Okay. Well, I mean, I want to just take us back a little bit. Your first ever job in politics was on the 2012 Obama re-election campaign. What does it feel like to go from that to this?
It's a reminder that things can change fast. That's 15 years, 13 years. We went from Obama in 2012, who, won and then was leading through 2016, to Trump in 2025. Things can change fast. The future is not inevitable. We actually have a lot of agency, and I find that very comforting, actually.
Okay, that's nice. I like an upbeat. I mean, I think also often it's like your first taste of politics, or your first forays into politics sort of teach you what you think. They kind of teach you what you think the rules of politics are, or what you think is possible. Do you think it helped, like starting on a victory, that then you're like, it's okay, we can win?
We can win. And it really shapes my idea of how much who the leader is matters and what story they can tell. It's why I do candidate recruitment now, because I think the person on the ballot, the way that their life story and their personal experience gives meaning to all of the work that we do, and their values shape our values. That's the whole ball game. So I think it was really fundamental to how I got into this work.
Yeah. So you've been in politics for over a decade, working at pretty senior level, working as a staffer, recruiting candidates. Do you have a general or a current frustration of what the media covers too much or goes over the top on, that you're just like, I wish you wouldn't talk about this, or you completely misunderstand politics? What's the thing that you're just constantly like, oh, you're driving me crazy, way too many articles, you completely missed the point? What's over the top for you?
When people talk about the Democratic Party as if it is a thing that exists with any kind of structure or coordination, this is not like the UK. The party does not exist in the same way. There is no one in charge. There's no secret cabal of leaders making decisions. There is no even party membership that drives outcomes. There is just, interconnected group chats of elected officials and donors and activists and party leaders and, committee members and funders and volunteers who all are sort of trying to row their boats in the same direction. There is no the Democratic Party. The establishment, such that it exists, it has no juice. What are we talking about here? That is my over the top pet peeve. Just if you are saying the Democrats aren't, and you're not being precise about which actors among the party you're talking about, I don't take you seriously.
That's a great point. I'm a member of the Labour Party here in the UK, and it's I think that framework for a political party where I pay the Labour Party money every month. Many listening will be screaming that I shouldn't be. I get to vote for who represents me locally. I get to, be involved in campaigns for who's going to lead the party and who's going to be the deputy leader of the party. And the Democratic Party's a kind of much bigger party, but much looser ties. And I think the other thing that has always struck me about American politics is just the amount, the sheer number of politicians and elections that there are. So and just the number of jobs that there are in politics. There's Senate races, there's state legislature, there's mayors, there's governors. So you're talking about just a huge, huge number of people and lots of layers of decision making and sort of power.
There are 500,000 elected offices in the United States. More than half of them. There are more elected officials in the United States than there are McDonald's employees, which is like a sort of arbitrary
That's an amazing stat. I love it.
what to say. But like there's so many people. And I think we talk about the party as if it's just the people in Congress or just like the national leaders. It is not. It's shaped by the folks on the local level who really are in touch with where voters are.
Okay, so that's a great over the top. The Democratic Party is lots of group chats and lots of coalitions. It's not one big top down. And is that what motivated you to set up something that could shape the Democratic Party when you set up Run for Something?
Yeah. So Run for Something recruits and supports young, diverse leaders running for local office. And I think it's one of the things I love about what we do is we really focus on the positions that directly affect people's lives and on the positions where for most people, if they ever meet someone running for office, they're going to meet a local candidate. They're going to meet their city council member, their school board member, their state legislator. They're going to meet them at the grocery store or the gym or their kid's soccer game. It's going to be very personal. I think that is so powerful. I also think it's a way you get better talent running for higher office. The city councilors of today are your governors of the next 4 or 5 years, or your senators, and hopefully your presidents one day. And I think that is really exciting for what we do.
I guess I have a question around to what extent that feedback loop is working right now. So one of the things that you campaign on is to end the gerontocracy in American politics, a word that I will admit I did have to Google. So a gerontocracy is a society or a state governed by older people. And in American politics, in the 119th Congress, the average senator is 64 years old, the average House member is 57 years old, and half of the US Senate, so that's like the upper chamber, for those not in America, is 65 years or older. 30 of the 50 US governors are 60 years or older. That even goes down to things like school board members, where the median age of a school board member is 59 and the median American is 38 years old. So right now, is there a disconnect? Are those candidates that stand for local office, are they getting into leadership roles, or are just there lots of people hanging on for dear life and well past certainly the UK retirement age?
We are at a tipping point now. There are Millennials and Gen Z running for higher office at higher rates than I think any year before. There are 5 Run for Something alum currently running for governor, 4 running for United States Senate, a couple dozen running for statewide offices or House seats. A lot of them are going to win. So I think we're at a tipping point. It took getting people into these lower offices to get the credibility and experience and skills they needed to run for higher office. But now that they're there, our bench is so strong, so diverse, so inspiring. And I think that is one of the things I'm really pumped about for 2026 is no matter what happens, the Democratic Party is going to look different because it's going to have different people in these positions of power.
Okay, that's amazing and really good news. To bring us back to the bad news, since the second Trump election victory, it feels like there's a never-ending stream of news. So even from when we scheduled this interview to when I was reading your wonderful book, we've had Tylenol, we've had Jimmy Kimmel, we've had the government shutdown, there's Trump X, is that the name of his pharmaceutical company that he's done with Pfizer? What is it like being political, working in politics, and kind of being on the receiving end of this seemingly never-ending stream of news? How do you work out what's noise and what's important?
Oh, it's exhausting. Totally exhausting. But I try and really only, think about it only drink the poison you've got the antidote for. So I consume the news that I can take action on. For my work, that means Democratic Party politics, Congress to a certain extent, a lot of local news across the country, generational stuff about our candidates. And then I live in New York City, so I consume a lot of local news. I care a lot about the mayoral race here because I want to be able to stay in the city for as long as I can. But that means that there's a lot that because I don't feel like I can do something concrete on, I don't tune in as much to. And I think that's okay because for me, I got to maintain some balance. I got to make sure that I have enough of a sanity check on how much of the fire hose I'm drinking at any given point.
Do you feel like that's a deliberate tactic strategy of the Trump administration to just have you feeling overwhelmed and bamboozled by all of the news?
They want us to feel like we're suffocating and drowning in the information. It's a literal shock and awe tactic. If they can make it so you tune out everything, then they can get away with much, much worse stuff. We can't let them. And this is going to be a long fight. So we got to stay in it for the next couple of years, not just the next couple weeks or months. So it's a balance.
Does it feel different to 2016 or?
2017 to 2020 was such a blur. It does because it's more serious this time. There's more competent fascism, whereas last time it was sort of like bumbling clowns. I think they were the dog that caught the car in 2017, whereas now they're, the dog that is driving the car, running at full speed into, houses and homes and people. It's scary, and they're causing a lot of real damage. The disappearing people off the streets, ICE kidnapping American citizens, the sending military force into the United States cities, massive firings of federal workers, refusing to spend federal funds that have already been appropriated. That shit's scary, and it's going to cause real harm. And that's not even talking about some of the stuff that state legislators had already passed, like some of the reproductive health bans that have women literally bleeding out in the parking lot of hospitals because they're afraid to go in and get the care they need. Trans kids and LGBTQ kids who feel like they can't access the safe mental health treatment or support that they need. It's scary. But all we can do is keep trying to mitigate harm as much as we can and fight for a better future. What's the alternative?
I mean, nothing. Doom scrolling on Instagram until late in the night. But I like that only drink the poison you have the antidote for. You mentioned New York and you mentioned Mamdani. He's been hugely exciting for progressives all around the world. Do you think he's going to win in November?
Yes, they do. I think it's a question by how much, but I do think he's going to win in November. I think Andrew Cuomo is a bad candidate and a bad person. Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee. That counts for a lot. And also he's a great candidate and a great person. And his campaign is taking this very seriously. They are sending out tens of thousands, I believe, at last count. They're hoping for 90,000 volunteers on the final stretch. I know we've gotten lit on our door in the last couple of weeks and months. I'm excited to see what they do of this final 5-week stretch.
I feel like he's a sort of intersection of things that you work on because he's a younger candidate. He's a millennial candidate. He met his wife on Hinge. He feels like he makes these amazing Instagram videos. Is he an example of the kind of this pipeline that you've been helping to build of like candidates coming through that are younger? And is it a very New York thing that Cuomo is standing? Like how much of this is like New York being a very unique and special and wonderful place? And how much of this do you think you'll see filtering through into like other races across the country?
He is absolutely the embodiment of what Run for Something is all about. We did not endorse him in his first race, so I don't want to claim credit for him in any way. But he's what we're talking about here. Locally driven candidates who start out in local office, move up to higher office, really rooted in values, really authentic communicators, really understand what their voters care about and hyper-focused on why voters should want them to win, not just why they want to win. I think that's really powerful. Do I think that he could have won? I think Cuomo's really uniquely bad. And it's telling that during the primary, so much of the Democratic Party establishment was getting behind Cuomo. They were making calls behind the scenes. They were trying to move money. They spent $30 million in super PAC ads in support of him. He's one of them. They will always protect their own. I think that is a damning indictment of some of these establishment actors and these old guard leaders, including Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, our senators and our minority leader in the House. Damning indictment. And the fact that many of them can't get behind Mamdani now, similarly damning. I don't think most other places have their version of Andrew Cuomo where, he is a uniquely bad person, a lot of corruption, a lot of sexual harassment.
Yeah, it kind of ticks all the bad boxes, almost the bribery, the sex pest. It's just kind of a parody of a politician in some ways.
Yeah, but many places have their old guard who refuses to step down when it's past their time. And in all of those, I think we're going to see more and more leaders step up and say, these people are not unbeatable. They only go unchallenged. Let's challenge them.
Thank you to everyone who listens to and supports the show, especially as we've been working out our new format. Special shout out to all the Patreon supporters who make a regular gift to cover the costs of the podcast. And an extra special shout out to Bronwyn, who just increased her support on Patreon in the last week. If you can afford to make a gift or to increase your donation, please go to patreon.com/overthetop_under-the-radar. It's no exaggeration to say the show only exists because a few hundred listeners make a donation to cover our production costs. To say thank you, Patreon supporters get an extended episode of the show each week and a chance to send questions to guests. They also get to join our Over the Top, Under the Radar WhatsApp community. It has its own Spotify playlist, and they recently had a virtual meetup. It's honestly one of the best things about making the show, the relationships that people who listen have made with one another. And just feel really grateful and appreciative of it. If you can't support the show financially, there are other things you can do. You can leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform you use or share an episode with a friend. Over Under really is a team effort, and I'm so grateful to all of you for your support, even if it's just coming up to me on the street and saying hi. Thank you for listening to Over the Top, Under the Radar. You can follow us on social media at over_under_pod_, and please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show and you want to keep us going, you can support us with a donation at patreon.com/over-the-top-under-the-radar. Obviously, you set up Run something a while ago. It's like, do you finding more people want to run for office, or has the Trump effect been a bit chilling? And if people felt like, I don't want to be involved in this, like it's horrible and it gets personal, and even your own side aren't going to support you if you're representing something different?
Great news. We've had more people sign up in the last 11 months than we did in the entirety of Trump's first term.
Wow.
70,000 people just about have raised their hands to say they want to run for office since the election last year. That's more than in 2017 through 2021. It's huge numbers. And some of the biggest moments for us were, after the last government shutdown fight or spending fight in March, and after Mamdani won in June. 10,000 people signed up in those 2 weeks after he won. So change is coming. Thank God.
And so someone sees Mamdani win and they're inspired, or they see the government shutdown and they're disgusted, and they go onto your website and they put in a form. What happens next?
So you sign up at runforwhat.net, where you can look up what office you might be able to run for wherever you live. You'll start getting information about filing deadlines and information on how to get on the ballot. You'll get added to the Run for Something community space, which is an online portal that gives you a couple different curriculums. One for if you're ready to run now, one if you're ready to run a couple years from now. And throughout completing those curriculums, you'll get touch points from Run for Something mentors and alumni who will help talk you through personally how to go through this. Once you've actually filed to run, you can apply for our PAC's endorsement. We endorse about half the people who apply. That's where we do a really strict value screen. We do background checks. We do local operative review. That's where we age gate it. So we only endorse people 40 and under in their first race, only local office, and only Democrats or going into 2026 independents. We really want to make sure we're building long-term power.
I saw that you announced that recently. What was the rationale behind that decision of endorsing independents?
We were hearing from local partners on the ground and from our regional directors that there were great values-aligned candidates who didn't want to run on the party brand wherever they were for whatever reason, that to be a Democrat was so toxic, but they needed to lead and they were otherwise aligned with us. And so we wanted to be open to where we could make sure we were winning all kinds of races.
I mean, and is that also a feature of the Democratic establishment, in this sense that there's an old guard or a gerontocracy that are in charge of a lot of the party machinery, whilst accepting that, the Democratic Party isn't a monolith, there isn't one person pushing buttons that controls it all? Is it also a response to that?
It's this idea that we cannot even really trust the establishment leaders to think expansively about who should be in power, and to think not just about everyone, to think about everyone winning, not just themselves. So if in order to get someone whose values aligned into power and they have to run as an independent, great. Let's try it. If this doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we got to try something new if we're going to get different results.
2026 will be the midterms, and that's where all of the House of Representatives are up for re-election. Presumably there'll be some gubernatorial races and other things. So what's the opportunity there? And at what point, you guys feel like your presidential races get locked in quite soon? When do you think you'll have a sense of who the presidential candidate is and who's going to be running? Presumably not against Trump. Presumably he's not going to have a third term, you can say.
He's not allowed. Constitution says he can't, so he can't. We should not give in to this doomerism that says he's going to run again. Just because he says it does not mean it's true. So the House was up for grabs. The Senate is also up for grabs. About a third of the Senate is on the ballot. There's also about a dozen or so governor's races, state legislative races all across the country, and of course, tens of thousands of local elections in 2025 and 2026. We need to flip the House. It's going to be really hard. Republicans are trying to redraw the maps, doing a unprecedented mid-cycle redistricting process so that they can rig the maps in their favor because they know the political environment is not good for them. The Senate map is also very hard. We have to win places that Trump also won, so we need really good candidates, we need strong campaigns, and we need to be able to communicate effectively in this moment. But I do think we can eke it out. I think we have to be optimistic. People often like to go into my mentions or my DMs and be like, we're never going to have an election again. If you believe that, you should be on the street with a gun. What are we doing here? I think we should operate as if we will have election, and then we should resource campaigns and candidates just in case. Just in case.
Just in case it still happens.
Now, the 2027-2028 cycle is going to be a shit show because there's going to be a competitive Democratic primary, very competitive. There's no clear front runner. There's no obvious, even going into 2020, Biden was ahead basically the whole time. It was competitive, but he was number one in polling the whole time. That is not going to be the case for 2028. And J.D. Vance is not going to walk into that Republican nomination without a fight. He's going to have a very messy challenge. I think we'll see Pete Hegseth challenge him. We'll see Kristi Noem. We'll see Marco Rubio. We'll see Nikki Haley. We'll see Ron DeSantis. I think it's going to be a shit show.
Very strong emotional reaction to this now, Amanda.
I know. It's going to be exhausting.
That is a real shit show. Oh, Lord. Okay.
But I think it's very easy for Democrats to get a little self-immolating and be like, oh, it's going to be such a mess. No, man, it's going to be messy on both sides. And I don't think we should let them get away without embracing their own chaos.
That is really good to remember. Yeah.
The Trump coalition is not an easy one for any other Republican to hold. So they're going to have to piece, because there's a lot of people who may be MAGA, but aren't MAGA when it's communicated by anyone other than Trump. His ability and his personal brand really supersedes a lot of the bullshit. So what happens when Marco Rubio tries to sell the same stuff, or Kristi Noem? It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Ted Cruz again, or what?
Probably. He's going to try. They're all going to try. Josh Hawley's going to try. Tom Cotton's going to try. Katie Britt, that senator from Alabama, who's very trad wifey, but senator, is going to try. My guess is we'll see an Erica Kirk or one of the conservative podcasters try. Going to be a mess. Let's go.
I've just chaotic, many, many different options on all sides. Okay, so who knows, 2027, 2028, hopefully in the midterms, Democrats are going to sort of crawl back. Donald Trump is obviously very unique, and we're seeing around the world a number of political leaders that are in his image or have his vibe, whether that's Zemmour in France, whether it's Farage in the UK, who is, his party is currently polling ahead of everyone. So if an election were held tomorrow and if polls were right, Reform UK would be the largest party and Farage could be the prime minister. Yeah, and I mean, Farage in particular is interesting because he has really strong links to Donald Trump and is very proud of it. He was asked about Tylenol and refused to condemn, the very obvious medical misinformation that was put out. As someone who's a little bit further down the track than certainly the UK, do you feel now that there's a stronger playbook on how to deal with Trumps? And do you as an American kind of look around the world and say, oh, this is a broader trend, this is happening in other places? To what extent do you kind of situate yourself in that bigger political round?
I think we're still figuring out the playbook to beat him. I think there's some clear things we've learned even in the last 8 months, 10 months. They are not invincible. They get spooked by the markets. Economic warfare is really powerful, in particular boycotts. You need strong civil society to fight back. You need university leaders, business leaders, local leaders as much as possible to have some backbone, and you can't count on them to. They don't like being ridiculed, which is always really fun. That's why they try and get the comedians off the air. But I do think change is hard. And I think one of the things that all of these countries are going through around the same time is a broader demographic shift, a change in the racial makeup of these communities, generational shift in these communities, these countries. Building a diverse country is really difficult because it's diverse. It's hard. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I think that is my bigger takeaway of how I position myself. It's hard because it's hard and it's worth doing anyway.
It feels at the moment like something that is true across a lot of countries is a strong sense of malaise and discontent and our countries aren't working, our societies aren't working. In the UK, that's our healthcare system, our economy. One of the things that I think is that people reach for these populist far-right candidates because it's shake up the system, something different, I'm pushing the red button, everything is broken, and at least they're suggesting something different. And, more establishment centrist candidates, it feels like more of the same. And part of that as well seems almost like a lack of patience So in the UK, the Labour Party did win a huge landslide a year ago, and people are already sick of them. People already feel like they're not doing enough. Nothing's changing. And that's undoubtedly fueling the energy towards reform. And it's like, well, at least they're going to do something dramatic. And obviously Trump is king of the sort of theatrics. What is it like trying to recruit people to be politicians in this environment? And like, what is it that the good candidates learn? Like, how do you be a politician at a time when people hate politicians more than ever?
Remind them that local politics is a way to solve problems. Like, especially right now, the things that people are the most mad about, cost of living, which is really cost of housing, cost of childcare, cost of transportation, cost of healthcare, those are in large part shaped by local leadership, like especially housing. If you ever in the United States want to be able to buy a house, we need to build more housing. Also, a lot of other stuff we need to do, but we need to build more housing. We have a huge supply problem. That's shaped by city and county governments, full stop. We need more pro-housing people, pro-building people in these offices. And we need them to like think about it in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different levers you could pull. But if we don't have people in these positions who are really aggressive about it right now and attack it with the urgency we need, we're not going to get solutions. You're never going to be able to buy a home. I think that's one of the things I'm so excited about with like the 70,000 people we've had sign up in the last year is they so clearly understand that the status quo is not working and that we have to bring new solutions to these problems. We cannot pretend that the way we did things yesterday will be the way we do things tomorrow, because the way we did things yesterday was not working for most people.
Most people listening to the show are progressive. They want left-wing things to happen. They want more houses. They want affordable healthcare. They want well-funded public schools. And I think that's a really important point, because this idea that support for far-right or populist candidates means that our values aren't popular or we haven't got a chance of winning. Like there's almost more of a call to action of actually, if we can kind of cut through the crap and have strong solutions, there's going to be an appetite for that. I think of the, AOC's Instagram poll after the last election for people who'd supported her and Trump, and like, why did you cast a vote for me and a vote for him? And I think there's an important reminder that most voters, most people who aren't political obsessives don't see everything on like a left-right spectrum. They see it in terms of like the lives that they're living, the communities they're in. So I think that's like quite a nice call to action for people, that there's hope, because most people don't see everything through this like left-right prism.
Most people are not ideologically cohesive. Like I'm not ideologically cohesive. Most politicians are not ideologically cohesive. They are people who interpret things through their lived experience and through their friends and through their social media and through some combination of economic reality and faith and the values that their parents instilled in them, and also whatever weird books and content they consume. Like people have things they believe. They don't really have concrete, pure ideology in the way that I think sometimes the discourse gets caught up in, which is why who the candidate is really matters. Because how they can communicate, what they can communicate, how they can tie the big problems to local solutions, it's the whole ballgame.
With all of the work that you do, what's the thing that you think flies under the radar the most when people are reporting on American politics? What's the thing people don't talk about, they should be talking about more, that really matters?
That we are winning. We're winning. Isn't that crazy? We are. We are winning. We are winning special elections this year, but also we are electing people like Burhan Azim to the Cambridge City Council, who then passed the most ambitious rezoning policy basically anywhere in the country and will increase housing around the Boston area exponentially over the next decade.
And can you explain for folks what rezoning is?
It's the rules that dictate what kind of building you can do in any particular place. Like, can it be an apartment building or a single family home or a business? And the rules are really, really restrictive in a lot of places, which shapes how much housing we can build. And he blew that up in a really meaningful way. We are electing folks, or working to elect folks like Lily Franklin, who's a farmer running in rural Virginia for the state legislature there, who last cycle we worked with her. She lost by just a couple hundred votes and it's now one of the most competitive races in the state chamber. I think she's going to win and transform her community in a meaningful way. We've got leaders like Mallory McMorrow, who's running for Senate in Michigan, and James Tellerico, who's running for Senate in Texas, and Zach Walz running for Senate in Iowa, Christian Menefee in Texas, who are fun and exciting and inspiring and different in lots of different ways, but all know who they are and what they believe and can communicate in a meaningful way and are bringing new people into the process. And there is like a lot of hope, a lot of hope.
I like that, because I feel like the Trump is and probably will always continue to be this media magnet and this kind of energy magnet. But I love the idea that there are lots of down ballot candidates and people that maybe don't get as much shiny press coverage, but are doing lots of the real work. That's very exciting. And then I want to talk about your wonderful book, which I'll put on camera. It's got a lovely cover as well, When We're in Charge. So it's sort of like it's a bit like a leadership and like management guide for millennials and Gen Zs. I am a millennial, so enjoyed it. And it's, for those of you who haven't read it, you should get it. It's like accessible, practical. And something I loved is there's a lot of kind of real talk about things like work-life balance. You talk a lot about this idea of authenticity, and you're kind of bringing your like real self or your full self to work, and things that I guess do you feel like be interested for non-millennials and Gen Z listeners, but like feel like real challenges for those of us that grew up with social media before we were born, or like grew up sort of joining social media as we got older. What motivated you to write the book?
Well, part of it was that when I was preparing to go on maternity leave with my first daughter, and I was trying to find guides on how to do that. And I kept Googling like how to take maternity leave as boss. I couldn't find anything. There was a lot of like how to ask your boss for maternity leave, because America does not have paid family leave, but nothing on how to actually do it. And that really spoke to me and like made me reflect on a lot of the leadership advice I had gotten over the years. I've been running Run for Something for almost a decade. I was 26 when we started. I'm 35 now. It is been very isolating and very lonely, and it's been really hard. And part of the reason that it's hard is because we've tried to do it differently. We do things like a 4-day work week. We're really intentional about DEI, both as a practice and as a philosophy for the work. Really intentional about work-life balance. Really intentional about modeling the kind of inclusive and welcoming culture we want as a company. And when I decided to write the book and started talking to other millennial and Gen Z leaders across a bunch of different sectors, from CEOs at major tech companies to editors at magazines to teachers and faith leaders and doctors, I heard the same thing over and over again. This is hard. I don't have a playbook. I feel like I'm dealing with challenges that every boss I ever had before didn't have to deal with. I feel like I am working without a guide. Why is this so hard? Why does it feel like I can never do anything right? How do I post on Instagram if my employees follow me there? How do I have executive presence in a Slack chat or a Zoom room? So When We're in Charge is an answer to those questions and really poses the question back to the reader. What would it be like if work didn't suck? What could be possible? What could it free up for you as a person, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, as a community member? And how can you build your company, your job, your team, your life in such a way to make that possible?
How did the book land with like non-millennials and Gen Zs?
I've loved hearing from my Boomer and Gen X listeners and readers. One Gen X gets really mad that they're ignored, which is classic Gen X. Gen X.
That's just that's your thing. You're the ones that get ignored.
Don't blame me. It's not my fault. That's the Boomers who left you out. But I've been really loving hearing from people who don't sort of fall into the exact audience for it, who've read it or listened to it and said, it's given me so much more empathy for the people I work with, for my kids, my grandkids, my colleagues, my mentees. I didn't realize how hard you guys had it and what the struggles that you were dealing with. I didn't have the language to talk about this. And I think a lot, I had an interaction after a speaking event I did a couple weeks ago, where I talked, at length about we don't have dream jobs, we have dream lives, because we know, especially for millennials and Gen Z who's been through, economic recession and pandemic and COVID and 2020, work is not going to love us back. It just won't. We cannot build all of our identity and all of our self-worth around our jobs. And after the event, this older man came up to me, Boomer, and said, when you said work won't love me back, that hit me right in the gut, because I've never heard it put that way. And if I had known that, I would have made different choices, because you're right. It didn't love me back. My heart breaks for him. I know, it's just so sad. Now, relatedly, and going back to what we were talking about earlier with politics, I submitted a question for Senator Tina Smith as part of a podcast interview that she was doing. They asked me to send a question in for her. And it just came out earlier this week. And my question for her, she's retiring. She's in her late 60s, but she's retiring from the United States Senate, creating space for new leadership. And she was very explicit. I'm doing this because I want to spend time with my kids and my grandkids, because I think I've completed my service. I want to open the seat for new leaders from Minnesota. And I asked her, why do you think it's so hard for your colleagues to do the same? And her answer, the first thing she said before she got into anything else, was, I think their jobs are their whole identities. They can't imagine what they might be without this. That's what we're talking about here. I don't want that. You don't want that. So how can we as leaders set up companies and teams so that's not the case?
What would you say to people listening who are thinking about running for something or a bit like, oh, maybe it's not me, maybe I could do it? What would you say to push people who are considering it? Like, what would you say about running for office?
Do it. Do it. Do it. If you're even thinking about it, we need you to do it, because it is, if you don't do it, someone much stupider, who cares much less, and is not going to work as hard and not going to be able as thoughtful about it, is going to do it. The dumbest, worst people never second guess themselves. It is winnable. It is achievable. It is totally doable. And win or lose, every candidate I've ever worked with or talked to has told me, I'm glad I did this. Like, I've never met one who said I regret running. There's like, they'll, do things differently. Maybe would have nipped around the edges a little bit, but I've never met someone who regrets getting in the race in the first place, because it changes their relationship to their community and their neighbors in a really powerful way.